Greetings, my friends, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, once again joined by co-host my dad, Phil, to discuss another interesting topic, another interesting subject, as always. This time, we're going to be talking about bands that we never bothered with for whatever reason, but once we had finally given them the time of day and actually delved into their catalogue, we realised the horrific error of our ways and just what we were missing out on. So for whatever reason, whether it was didn't like the hype, didn't like our bad first impressions, if you like, the first thing you come across might not actually be really good character representation of the band, for whatever reason, maybe not enough money to buy another catalogue, whatever. Didn't bother with it, but once we realised just how good this stuff is. So, do you want to kick off with your first band you didn't bother with, but now you love?
Yep, I will. Yeah, okay. Well, this story begins round about 1978. No, 1988, I beg your pardon, because it's just I'm normally talking in the 1970s, but
usually.
I've relented on this occasion. Band from the US of A, from the state of Missouri. This little collection of guys, King's X. Like I say, the first album was 1988, and at the time, I was working in music retail. I know I keep saying that, but I was at the time, and I remember the band come along, and there was quite a lot of interest. They were signed up to Megaforce Records, which was part of Atlantic Records, so Warner Brothers. So this was a big label. This was a well signed up label. It's not an indie label or anything like that.
That's interesting because they had all the thrash bands, didn't you? Metallica and bands.
They did, yeah. That's right. They did, but they signed these up, and I think right from the word go, they were going to be a little bit difficult to sort of I don't like to say pigeonhole, but just to get a feel for what you're talking about here. And they were described as a progressive metal band, which I think it's okay in places, but they're one of these bands who their style really dances around, and I don't know if, because I must have heard some of it, I must have done, but it didn't connect with me at all. And then as time went on, they had their day. Their day was quite a long day. It went on. I think they made 6 albums for Megaforce. Then as is the way of these things, the world changes and things move on. They continue to make albums and to tour, but the record label is much smaller now, and the sales aren't what they were, because they certainly had chart success in the UK anyway. I think they were actually more successful in Europe than they were at home. Mm-hmm. And they're still around now. They're still touring, and they're still recording, as far as I know. And the lineup is pretty much the same. But the story started for them back in '88 with this album, Out of the Silent Planet. Now, I decided, I'd heard some talk about it. I thought, no, this is time. I need to check this out, because a lot of people have often said that this band was sort of very influenced by Rush and Kansas, and as well as sort of the metal side. So I thought, well, this has got to be worth checking out, if nothing else. And goodness me, I got hold of this box set. These are fantastic, these little things. If anybody's just looking to put a toe in the water, you can't go far wrong with this. I mean, $11.50 or something ridiculous like that.
They're great. I've got a few of them.
It's simply too cheap to ignore. In fact, literally last night, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said to him, have you heard these? And he said much the same as I said. He said, no, I never bothered with them. I said, well, if you don't check this out for 11 quid, then really you're missing out. So, but anyway,
I'm sure what you
I
actually said
immediately,
was a lot ruder than that.
yeah, probably, yeah, I probably was. Although I'll be honest with you, George, we went over there last night to our friends just down the road, and I was driving.
Oh
Yes,
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 yes.
you heard it here
Oh,
first.
yes.
Your father was driving last night when we went out to dinner with our friends. And that doesn't happen very often, I'm glad to say, because of the sulking simply can't be put up with by my wife. But anyway,
Justified.
we getting back to the band. I this album, I put this album on, and my goodness me, it's absolutely sensational. To my ears, this is unreal. The It's a three-piece band. The the guy is a guy called Doug Pinnock. He's the sort of linchpin of the band, and he's the vocalist bass player, and he's an incredible bass player, really, really amazing bass player. And but he's got such a good voice. This guy, he doesn't sound like you would expect a band. If I said to you, a prog metal band, you would think, yeah, okay, I can envisage what that is.
Hmm.
Think
You
about
get a
Dream
good
Theater.
idea, at least.
You
Yeah.
know the kind of thing you're going to get. But what you don't expect is a guy whose voice sounds like it belongs in the very late 60s, the early 70s, in the British, what they could describe as the second invasion sort of bands like
Yeah.
10 years after Humble Pie, all these kind of blues rockers. This guy's got some really bluesy sort of voice, a tremendous singer, absolutely brilliant singer. I don't know what the hell sort of idea, who had the idea of mashing all this up together, because it really is a big time mashup.
Okay.
But out of it all, you get this amazing music, and everything is really good about this band. They, by and large, they use a producer, a guy called Sam Taylor, who I must admit is a new name on me. I never heard of him before, but he's clearly a guy who really knew what he was doing, and he took these boys and the I don't know how to really describe this, really, because it's guitar, drums, bass, and vocals.
Hmm.
There are some keys on there, but not much, not
Hmm.
much. And it's sparing with the keys, but it kind of, it's got this sort of metal, sort of jagged feel to it, if you know what I mean. There's sort of
Bit rough around the edges.
Metallica comes to mind,
Okay.
actually, but that's just in places. But there's a
Mhm.
lot else going on around it. You really do need you need to listen to it to really get to grips with it. And I'm not sure, it might not be your cup of tea, but if you're a fan of as I say, if you think, well, bands that would have been around in the first half of the 70s, bands like Robin Trower and people like that, whose vocal style and delivery style was a certain type of bluesy thing. Well, the American band, it's got a British feel to it. I like that. Anyway, they got on the way with this, and then the next one was this one, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, and this was the big one. This was the breakthrough.
I
Second
like the
album in,
covers. I like
yeah,
the
it's
covers.
really
Yeah.
all the covers are really good, actually, really good. And again, this is I'm just trying to think what was the everybody knows a bit. Yeah, everybody knows a little bit of something. That's the song that kind of stood out at the time. That was what everybody's talking about. That's a really good poppy song, if you like, for this sort of thing. But it's absolutely superb, and this did some really good business. I was looking at the stats on this. This was a charting album in the UK, quite a decent level, actually. I remember it selling very well at the time. And again, once again, I don't really know why I wasn't prepared to give it a go. I
Mhm.
think there's a little bit of perhaps resistance to, I don't know, even by that time I
Mhm.
was probably getting resistant to trying too much new. And it sounds crazy because it's such a long time ago, 1988. I mean,
Skepticism at the
how many
time.
years ago is that? I don't even know, 30 odd years ago. And I was oh, that's okay, I've got enough stuff, I don't need to listen to anything else. And as I say, yeah, it's all been done. It's a bit like when they in 1906, when they just when they decided in New York that they weren't going to extend the patent office in New York, because somebody said, Well, it's 1906 now, and pretty much everything that's been invented has now been invented. So we might as well not bother having any more shelf space. How wrong that person was, wasn't he? Really, but
Oh,
it's a bit like that with me. But I've realised now that those times gone on. But anyway, we move on. Then we get this one. This was another big album for them, Faith, Hope, Love. I don't think that's a very good cover, and I don't particularly like the title either. I'll be honest with you. And of
yeah.
these 5 albums, it's the one I don't like the least. The one I like the least.
Least favorite.
My least favorite, yeah. But still a good album. This album is the self-titled one. This is the 4th album. This is another fantastic cover, really good. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. We've got this kind of Dickensian scene with this little kid getting a few
Oliver
crumbs off.
Twist. Sort of
Oliver
thing.
Twist, yeah, that's the kind of thing. You get the message, don't you? But it's really good, and this is splendid. The opening track on this is called "The World Around Me," and I absolutely love that. That is possibly, close to being my favourite song of theirs. Really love this. This is stuff that I've really fallen for. And this is in my car, and I take this to work, and I listen to this a great deal. The last album in the box set is Dogman, which again, I don't know if you can quite see what's going on with that cover there, but it looks more like a pig, I think.
Yeah.
But it's still good cover. It's still a good cover. I do like it. It's a bit bizarre.
It's creepy.
It
It
is
reminds
good.
me. It reminds me of sort of like that sort of Resident Evil, sort of like monsters and
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
Terminator, kind of getting into that sort of sci-fi, sort of
It is a bit,
creepy
isn't it? Yeah.
element. Yeah,
It's yeah. It is a bit disturbing,
weird.
and I also like the picture on the back. Actually, you've got the 3 guys there. You've got Doug and you've got Ty Tabor. I should give a bit of a mention to a guy called Ty Tabor. He's the guitar player because he is off the charts. This is him here, I think, but he is off the charts. He's playing a fantastic guitar player, absolutely amazing. But I do like this little shot of the guys. I just like to think that they've just been working in the studio and they're just strolling down the street, going to have a quick pint and have a chat and see what's
Yeah,
going on. And also, I don't know whether you can notice this, but you see these little images here. It's a
yeah.
man
And
and
the
a
dog.
dog, and the album's called Dog Man. And I just think that's really funny. The drawing, and there's no particular reason for it to be there, but hey, why not? Because this is rock and roll.
Oh
And
yeah,
but yeah, I like that. And we, as you know, we're both people that rate or need our album artwork to be as good as it can be because
yeah.
it's all part of the thing.
It needs to make
But yeah,
sense.
what I would also say is that I haven't actually pushed beyond these 4 albums. I have only done this so far. There's one more album on Megaforce, and then after that, as I said, we get into the slightly more smaller label stuff. I think in total it was about 13 studio albums, which actually isn't a huge amount when you think about how long the band's been going. 88 to now is what is it, 35 years.
Yeah.
13 albums, a couple of official live albums as well. So it's not a huge thing, but I gather from reading about the band, particularly Doug Pinnock, is that they're one of these people who just does endless side projects.
Right.
Same sort of thing as what's the guy's name? Ripper Owens. Always doing something here, doing something there, another occasional band here, and
Can't
stuff like
stop. Yeah.
that. I can't stop, and I've got my doubts about that as a policy of working, actually, because sometimes I think that might just dilute your efforts a little bit. But some people just can't stop, can they? So, but that's fine. But I think that's what goes on with these lads. I think they do an awful lot of that kind of thing. But yeah, that's really it. Because I can't say much more beyond these 5 albums. But my goodness me, I absolutely adore this lot. I am so surprised that I just ignored it for all that time. But there you go. There's an awful lot of stuff to listen to, and there's not that much time to do it, is there? So
we hold our hands up and we say we're wrong. We were wrong.
It is. We were. I was definitely wrong. Definitely wrong in this case. Yeah. So there you go.
I like it, but I can't say that I've ever listened to King's X. I think when you first mentioned it, I listened to some of the tracks from Gresham Goes to Nebraska. I think that was the album.
Yeah.
or it might have been out the Silent Planet, but not quite my cup of tea. But I can see the attraction, if that makes sense.
That's a
It's
fair comment.
it's I appreciate the fact that it's quite late, really. Talking 88, that's late to the prog scene, but I guess right on time for
Absolutely.
prog
Yeah.
metal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they may have been. I have heard it said that they may have been a few years either side, maybe a little bit later, or possibly a bit
Mm,
sooner. Maybe they might have hit the jackpot a bit more. But maybe that was maybe 88 wasn't the right time. I don't know. But
mm,
they certainly had a decent career,
mm.
and I know that they're still around. So it sort of beats working, doesn't it?
Done
Beats
something
getting
right.
up in the morning and yeah,
But yeah,
and heading off to the office, I dare say.
absolutely. All right. Well, okay. So my first choice of a band that I never bothered with, but now absolutely love. So I absolutely hold my hands up and say that I was completely wrong to dismiss this band for so long, and I did dismiss them for a hell of a long time because I wasn't really convinced by the tag of progressive metal band. I'm not a massive prog fan, as you know,
Mhm.
but I can appreciate some progressive bands, like if we're talking Magnum or like prog metal wise, talking maybe Savatage, bands like that. They've got different elements thrown in there.
Mhm.
It's a little bit more complicated. However,
Mhm.
you throw prog metal, then it's lost on me. Bands like Opeth, the massive bands, I just haven't given them enough time. Haven't really been able to find albums or songs that I can really connect with yet. But the one that I put off massively, and I heard so much hype about it as well, about just how brilliant this band was. Talking about the mighty Enslaved from
Mhm.
Norway, and yes, they are mighty because since actually getting into this band, and we are talking within the last year to 18 months, probably closer to 18 months, about a year and a half, I think, trying to scour my mind, see when I actually decided to give them a chance. Since actually giving them a go, I have been absolutely converted, absolutely love it. So I got into the band in a bit of a weird way, though. So I didn't start with the early material and work my way chronologically, nor did I start with the most recent albums. I kind of started halfway through. Um, Actually, it's 2012 album, which I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of, but it's Ritir, or Riitir rather, runes, basically. And I'm trying to work out the right angle not to have too much horrific glare on there, but
Mhm.
an interesting cover for a very
Oh.
interesting album. This is a very interesting one. I would say that it's quite heavily progressive, yes, but it's got a whole lot of character. There's a whole lot of stuff going on there. You've got these elements of sort of folky, because the band is from Norway, one of the sort of pioneers, really, of the Viking metal sound and
Mhm.
style. But there's a whole lot of different elements, not just progressive. There's flares of black metal which characterize their early formative years, I suppose. Um, and then I sort of leapt around a little bit randomly because I then acquired this, which is actually a compilation of EPs, because it's got the, don't know if you can probably see it there, but it's got the Sleeping Gods and Thorn EPs. So
Mhm.
try and find the right angle there. So
Mhm.
basically just sort of a little compilation of a couple of random bits. That's what it feels like. But I was really intrigued. It was really progressive, way more progressive than the stuff that I usually go for. But it was really good. And then I kept going, kept delving deeper. We had an album. I think this is actually pronounced E, or it's called E, but it looks like an M because it's a rune, or runes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Really like it. You've got some brilliant stuff here. Tracks like Storm Sun or Sacred Horse, or even Hindsight, which has a saxophone in it, which is absolutely off
Wow.
reservation. I can hardly deal with having a saxophone in there. But I think that even yourself, as someone that doesn't really like aggressive or more extreme metal. I think if you could look past the moments where there are aggressive vocals, because there are some harsh vocals, and then there's clean vocals. You've got a mixture of the two styles. I think you'd find something that you really enjoy, because this is good stuff. And they've got some absolutely cracking albums like In Times, which was 2015, and I really like the artworks.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Well,
just going to comment on that. Yeah.
really, it's quite trippy, but it's really good. This is a very progressive album, but it's quite complicated. It's not the sort of thing that you just bung on in the car and hum along to. There's a little bit more going on. It's a bit
Whistle.
yes, you couldn't whistle along to that. No, you couldn't easily drum your fingers along to that one. But when we're talking about the older material, it completely ticks boxes for me, because going right back to the Enslaved demo from 1992, which is just vicious old school black metal, very early days, coming from Bergen, Norway. It's in the right place, right time. Absolutely ticks the boxes, as does the fantastic Hordanes Land, an EP, 3 tracks, and it's nearly half an hour long. You get a feel for you get a flair of the progression there, the progressive elements. Brilliant stuff, though. Absolutely love it. And it just the deeper you go, the more brilliant stuff you find. I don't actually have their first full-length album, because it's one of those albums where you can only get it on vinyl, and you're going to pay about £30 for it, and I'm just not quite happy to shell out on that. But the second album,
what year was that album, George?
This album, this is Frost. This is the second album, and annoyingly, it doesn't say it on the back there.
Because I remember that coming out. I remember that cover.
I think off the top of my head, I think it's 1994. So that
Yeah,
might
I was
be
going to
about
say, I
right.
definitely still working there then. Yeah, I remember that. It's a great cover.
That is
fantastic.
Frost. It's a
great title as well. It's a great title as well. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we start to get into, because we've sort of gone through black metal, where they're really characterized by that kind of sound and style, and then they started to really define what became known as Viking metal. And you just look at the arts on these albums, and you think, yeah, that's so Norse, that's so Viking, Eld and Bloodheim. Oh, it's brilliant stuff. But for so long, I just was not interested. I was not interested, because I just thought, progressive. I don't want to hear keys and keyboard stuff. I just don't want to. But how wrong I was. This is a particularly good one. This is Monumention, like Monument Dimension, kind of mixed together. Not a great cover, just weird. But I think that's very proggy cover. Very proggy.
It is. Yeah, definitely
proggy. But for me, of all these great albums, all great albums, none of these albums have I thought, actually, that's a bit weak. Don't like it. It's a bit pants, because they're all really good. The best material, in my opinion, my humble opinion, has actually been the last couple of albums. The most recent stuff with Utgard, which was very highly regarded, well received, 2020. So it's a couple of years old now, but this album got a significant amount of love in the press. A lot of best of the year lists featured that very high up, and this will certainly be featured in this year's list for myself. Is Heimdall or Heimdall. Absolutely glorious. Such a good album. Very progressive again, but it's remained true to their roots, because they've got a lot of those sort of black metal elements, extreme metal elements, but it's all in moderation. It's so brilliantly done. I'd say all of these Enslaved albums are a really good example of expert songwriting and musicianship. Absolutely fantastic. So I put them off for so long, and boy, was I wrong on that one. There you have it. Enslaved from
Can
Norway.
I just say, George? Yeah, I was just going to say that they're clearly a band that take that side of things quite seriously, don't they? And I think that was bit of a feature of those kind of bands, wasn't it? Really, there's some work gone into these covers, isn't there?
Oh yeah,
And
it's a
I
personal
do
favorite.
remember, yeah, they're sort of range from the sort of sinister to the quite dramatic,
Hmm.
Actually, I'm not so sure about that one. But I'll tell you
But
with the one that you held up first, the one with the lightning strike.
yeah, it's in here
Yeah,
somewhere. Is
yeah, that was that the firstish
that the
one.
one?
Yeah, yeah. Now, isn't it funny because certain things remind me of certain things. Now that reminds me, and certainly older viewers will know of a band called White Noise, who were around in the late 60s, and they made one album, and that is very similar. That cover is very similar, I can tell you.
Not familiar with
Immediately,
White Noise.
except if you take the side panel off there, and just the shot itself is very
Mm.
much like that. And in fact, there's another one that you showed, which
Hmm.
which had a black and white cover with a bit of a drawing-y type thing going on the front there. That reminded me, that style reminded me of those two Earthless albums that I was talking about to you. Do you remember we
Oh
talked about
yes,
Earthless?
yeah.
Look very much like that, actually. The um, same sort of feel of the artwork on there. But
Not that one. No.
no. Black and whitey sort of cover. I just noticed that. It's funny how things sort of like prompt. No, no,
You
no
go
worries.
endlessly through these
Yeah,
artwork.
I'm sure I saw what, unless I dreamt it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anyway. It doesn't matter. But I did notice actually, on one of the comments on the one we did for when you were talking about Root, who I really must check out. Actually, I'm intrigued by
The Great
that band.
Root. Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like it because we were talking about the logo, weren't we? And
Yes.
I there was something about the shape of it that just reminded me of something, and I said I couldn't think what it was at the time. But one of your keen-eyed viewers said that it reminded what it reminded him was an Eagles album cover, believe it or not. And yesterday, funnily enough, in the Reclaim shop, I found a copy of.
Ah,
Get it with
there
the
you go. Yes.
with that. Yeah, it's just kind of put me in mind. It's just the shapes thing, really, but it just put me in mind of that. I quite like that.
Oh yeah.
That was a bit of an aside, really, but yeah, they it does look like and bands that take a lot of care over their album artwork is always a good thing, I think. To be
It's
honest,
important to
it's
people
very
like us.
important. I don't think that sometimes people realise that when they allow something. We've
That little logo in the
yeah,
corner.
yeah. It's a bit of a strange one. They're grumpy sort of blokes then.
Oh
But
yeah.
when we were talking about good and bad album covers, weren't we?
Yes.
The show we did, and we were talking about how there's a disconnect between bands or artists and what actually is finally done in the way of a cover. But
Mm.
I don't know about you. If I was in that position, if I was in a band and stuff like that, that would be extremely important to me. I wouldn't allow anything to happen unless I really liked it, because it's got to matter,
It's
doesn't
fundamental.
it? It's
Yeah.
absolutely because it's what's in your mind when you're listening to it, and I don't think a lot of people get that. And
Oh
some of
no.
those the bad ones that we were talking about, yeah, because you're not bothering, so therefore, what does that say about you? But there you go. Anyway,
But you look at art like that from Axioma Ethica Odini, and that looks dark. That looks
oh, it
very.
does, doesn't it? It does, because that character in the middle there,
Yep.
you know what it looks like to me?
Does it look like?
Looks like he's waiting to be executed.
Yeah. I guess I was thinking more like, because of the circle, it almost looks like a portal or something.
Yeah, maybe, but that's what it looks like to me. The way he's looking down like that, he's waiting for a bullet. That's quite sinister, actually, to be honest, isn't it?
I mean,
I,
it
maybe I
could
should
well
say
be.
that, but that's just my mind. Too much documentary stuff going on there. But,
Too dark,
anyway,
man. Too dark.
but yeah, good. Sounds good, mate. Yeah.
The Mighty Enslaved, absolutely. I take back every time that I said, no, I don't think that's going to be my cup of tea, because
But
I'm not into
yeah.
progressive. Because honestly, this stuff is just, it's freaking amazing. And there's nothing better than going out for a first thing in the morning walk and putting one of these albums on with your headphones, because it's perfect. It just absolutely takes you there. Brilliant stuff. And in fact, I think you'd appreciate this particular one. This is a reissue of Vertebrae.
Well, you must lend it to me, boy, and I'll listen to it.
I
Will
will.
or can I stream it? Can I stream? I can probably stream it.
Oh, is it? Yeah, it's on Spotify or whatever.
Yeah,
But this
I'll
particular
stream it.
version has the inclusion of a couple of covers. We've got Red by King Crimson, and we've got Earthshine by Rush.
You're joking.
And it's actually,
They've
they're
done a
really
version
good.
of
Red. So instrumental pieces.
Bloody hell! Well, that's amazing. That is an extraordinary admission of where they're coming from. Then Red's a great album, King Crimson. I love that album. Brilliant.
I can't say I've
Wow.
heard it.
Well, well, you won't have done. You know, and if you did, you probably wouldn't like it, because King Crimson is very much an acquired taste.
Mhm.
I happen to love King Crimson because they are just legends. But what was the other one you mentioned? What's the other cover version?
Earthshine by Rush.
Yeah. I can understand that a bit more.
But that's absolutely miles apart from like this.
Oh
this,
yeah, but that's kind of, well, we don't like cover versions, do we? But we're prepared to allow them if they're an extra add-on or something.
As a bonus track with a reissue.
No, not part of the album.
No, can't do that.
My friend said to me last night, right? We were talking about stuff, and he said he's got a lot of stuff, a lot of music that he plays. He's a big fan, but he did seem to think that it was okay to not only do cover versions but also to have compilations, because he said to me, I said to him, first of all, I'm not really a completist. I'm not actually. I
am.
I know you are, and I told him that. And I said I'm a completist about certain bands. If it's a top 10 band. But once I start getting beyond that, it's too much. So therefore, I'm going to cherry pick, and I'm quite happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not cherry pick a compilation. But he said to me, "Well, yeah, but if you're a completist, even if you're top 10 and they've got a compilation out, do you have that as well? Because otherwise, you're not a completist." Which is very a bit existential, isn't it?
That is, yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
But it's also crap, because it doesn't mean anything, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything.
There you go. So I mean, no, absolutely not. No.
Prime example. I've gone on record many times to say this is the band. Yeah. This is my favourite band, and the Mighty Saxons. But I wouldn't buy their compilations.
No, why would you? Because you get everything else. Randomly,
I have a Carrera Years cassette tape compilation, which is like totally out there. I've never seen it before, and then just sort of got it as part of a job lot of tapes.
I remember it. Yeah.
That exception.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't go for that. Nor would I go for like the compilations of Maiden or Priest.
I've got a Saxon compilation, actually, funnily enough, and I bought it because it was on the Sail Trail. Do you remember we went on the Sail Trails? I just got it. I don't know why, but it fills the rack up. I shouldn't have it. In fact, I'm going to bust it and chuck it out. I don't need it.
Not worth. Yeah.
No. Right. Okay.
Sidetracked. So Enslaved. I'm so wrong. I recant my sins. What's your second choice of?
Right. Okay. We're going to go this time. I'm going back to a band that I think actually is still around in one form or another, but the heyday is many moons ago. And it's a band that I ignored for what I consider to be a pretty good reason, but now I've changed my mind. I'm talking about these lads from Chicago, Illinois, Styx. And this is the 1978 album, which I picked up recently on vinyl, as you can see, for a £5. Quite a nice copy, actually, with this very odd cover. A Hypnosis sleeve, that being the go-to design company in the 70s and 80s for rock album covers. These kind of very severe-looking young middle-aged women with their Easter Island type earrings, which is just a bit odd.
That is really weird.
You get some actual Easter Island type stuff here. Yeah, very weird, but you know, yeah. And because I picked up a copy of this, I was kind of inspired to, if inspired is the right word, to just go back and revisit this band again, because you know, And just a very, very brief little outline here. These were Styx were superstars in the late 70s and early 80s. One of the biggest bands in America by a mile. These were stadium headlining act. This was a number one album, mega platinum, absolutely no messing. They were right up there with Foreigner and REO Speedwagon and Journey and all the rest of them. And except that they were a prog band, but they were the prog band that was very melodic and very listenable. They weren't King Crimson we talked about a minute ago. This was a band that could cross over into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd been around. They started their recording career, I think, around about 1972. They signed to A&M Records, fairly mainstream label. They plied their trade for, I guess, 5 or 6 years, made a number of albums, but then they had a breakthrough album. Their breakthrough album came in 1977, which was this one. It's called The Grand Illusion. And it's got one
Again,
of those kind
weird
of
cover.
covers with where you depends what you're looking at and all that stuff going on.
Yeah.
Hence the Grand Illusion. Now, this album really, really took off for them. And all of a sudden they've gone from being, a quite a successful band to being a superstar band. Now, it's a concept album insofar as the theme of the album is, fame and fortune and success and adoration and stuff like that. It's all a bit of an illusion. It doesn't really matter because we're all basically the same underneath, and having loads and loads of money and huge limousines and great big places and private jets and stuff like that doesn't really make a difference because I'm basically the same as you, which is fair enough, but it's also slightly irritating coming from those people who've got all that money and success and fame and ride about in limos and fly in Lear jets and stuff like that.
Yeah,
exactly. You know what I mean? It's easy to say that, isn't it? But anyway, having said that, this is an absolutely fantastic album. I absolutely love this. I went and revisited this. I bought, once again, I went and bought one of these little box sets. 12 quid, 5 albums. Now, this is the first album of these 5. But what I wanted to say really was the reason why I ignored them in the first place. And this is quite important. It's the reason for that is because in 1979, they released this album, Cornerstone, which went on to be huge because they were one of these bands that after Grand Illusion, every album they got bigger and bigger and bigger. This album was absolutely enormous. Cornerstone, number 1 album in the States. It was just mega, and it's a good album. It's not as good as Grand Illusion. It's a damn good album. But the problem with it is it contains a song called Babe, right, which got released. Yeah, I know. Just the title itself is enough to get you running towards the lavatory. Babe was released as a single worldwide, and it was written by the lead vocalist and keyboard player, guy called Dennis DeYoung. Although he didn't handle all the vocals on their songs. They were one of these bands that shared the vocals around quite a lot, actually.
Like
Blue Oyster Cult, yeah, very Wishbone Ash. They all do that sort of thing. But he wrote and took the lead vocals on this album, and on that track, and it's a really horrible. I mean, the very worst of rock ballads. This is the sort of thing. This is the first name on the team sheet if some record company is putting together a rock ballads compilation that they're going to advertise on telly. Do you know what I mean? This is
alongside This Is the Love.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, and it was such a bad song. It was such a bad song. It didn't even have this band has got 2 fantastic lead guitar players in it, James J.Y. Young and Tommy Shaw, fantastic guitar players, both of them. But there's no real guitar solo on it. So it doesn't really get any, they don't even get a look in, right? It's bad. The lyrics are bad. It was number 1 in this country for about 6 weeks. So we had to.
Oh,
So I was only 15 at the time, and I was into rock music. I was sort of like, I couldn't have the Dave Lee Travis on in the mornings because I was too frightened of being violently ill. Right, having to hear it again. Right, and that's the truth. So therefore, as far as I was concerned, they were completely off the agenda. Even though, and I was thinking about this, um, they one of their great sort of not rival bands, but the fellow bands that was very successful at the same time, around about the same time, Foreigner. They had a big hit with a ballad that was possibly even worse, called "I Want to Know What Love Is." Now, if you've ever heard "I Want to Know What Love Is," in fact, you obviously haven't, because
I'd
if you had heard it, you probably wouldn't be sitting there now because it's that bad, right?
be
So
violently ill. Yeah.
exactly, you'd be in hospital. You'd be in a gastric unit basically because you would have lost too much fluid, and you'd be drips and stuff going on because I said, what happened? Well, I heard "I Want to Know What Love Is," and then the doctor's being ill because you've said the title and he can remember it.
Just like a chain
Sorry,
reaction of people being
it is. I'm being
sick.
silly now. I'm being silly now. But no, it was such a bad song, and this is true. Actually, no, they're not going to be for me. I know they're not. Even though there's no reason for it, because I love prog rock, and I certainly love all those stadium legends from way back. That I just mentioned, bands like Journey and Foreigner and REO and all the rest of them. I love them bands. But they have ignored them. But as I said, I went out and bought. I found this. I stumbled across this, and I thought, right, now I'm going to try again with this. And my reaction was, really did actually give them a bit of a bum deal here, actually, because this is exactly the sort of thing that I like. It's all there. They're consummate musicians, really consummate musicians. I mean, there's no doubt about it. As I mentioned, there's two lead guitar players. They've got twin lead attack, and that's always a good thing.
Oh yeah, dual
And
guitars.
they shared around the songwriting duties. They shared around the vocals. So it was a real band effort, and that's a good thing as well. I always think,
Yeah.
terrific album. And then the next one was, in fact, the one I showed you there, the Pieces of Eight album. This got even bigger. They had two really big hits off this: Great White Hope and Blue Collar Man. They're both major hit singles in America. I didn't know that at the time. I've read about this, but the album sales, when you read about the stats, were really off the charts. This band was a big time name. Already mentioned Cornerstone, which I like, apart from the track that we can't mention.
Without fear
And
of
then they
being
come up, and then by this time the lineup was actually, at this point, was exactly the same as it was when they started in 72. So we'd gone virtually a decade, and there'd no lineup changes. It was Dennis DeYoung, Tommy Shaw and J.Y. Young on guitar, and the Panozzo brothers, Chuck and John, the late John, on drums and bass. So it was a really good thing. And there's something about bands that can maintain a lineup over a long period of time. I think it says a lot about them. I really do.
I agree.
It's maybe over 40 years or 45 or 50 years, because nature will dictate that some people aren't going to make it, some people are going to not be well, or whatever happens. Some people will just fall away, whatever. But in a little stab like 10 years, I think it's important. But then the next one was this one, and this was their Paradise Theatre. This was their commercial peak. This was, again, another ridiculously big selling album.
Is that meant to be like a theatre, the front of a theatre?
Yeah, it is. That's what it is. It's called Paradise Theatre. It's sort of another kind of concept-y album again. It's all about being in a rock band and being on the road and how great it is to be on stage and stuff like that. It's a little bit of that sort of thing again. This for me was quite in this 5-album run. This is actually a bit of a dip. Actually, we started to tail off a bit after Cornerstone. It's still a good album. I still like it. So that's where we are. We've got the 4 of the 5 albums in my box set. I haven't much, same as I said with King's X, I haven't gone back before or after, because there were after this sort of period, they pretty much finished. You know, that was it really. It all broke up, and then maybe get back together just for greatest hits tours and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the next one they did, of
When
this
the money
batch,
gets low.
exactly, yeah, when we need to top up the bank account, that's right. The swimming pool needs to be rebuilt or whatever, you know. No, I can't be bothered to have it cleaned up or a new one built, you know, because I live next door to Joe Perry and he's got a bigger swimming pool than me.
I've got swimming pool insecurity. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they come up with this one. This is called Kilroy Was Here.
Oh no.
Now, all of a sudden, this band who have, you know, I've revisited and were, yeah, it was really good, really enjoying the stuff, made this album. This is awful. This is really awful. It's a kind of electro sounding, I mean, they had a hit on it called Mr. Roboto.
Oh God.
And it's all about this on the back here. You can kind of get a feel for it. It's this kind of, they're all playing, all the band members are all playing like characters. It all says so and so playing, you know, like it says Dennis DeYoung playing Kilroy and James Taylor playing Dr. Righteous.
What the
Anyway,
hell?
so and it's really kind of electronic, very heavy keyboards. The guitars aren't there and stuff like that. So to be honest with you, I can't be bothered with this. This kind of lets this 5-album run down a little bit, well, quite a lot actually. But other than that, no, really, really pleased that I stumbled across this. You know, like because I found that copy of the Pieces of 8 on vinyl, I've looked into it now, and for 12 quid, I've got myself the core of their main sort of catalogue. Really enjoy it. I'm going to. They had a live album out after Kilroy's here called Caught in the Act, which I've been reading about, and apparently it's a really, really good album. It's a double live album. I've never heard it. I remember it coming out, but I've never heard it, and that is on my sort of must-have list. I'm gonna track a copy of that down, and that probably will end up being one of those double live albums that I talk about. So you know. That's how things go. But yeah, overall though, really pleased I've got this because it's like a whole. It's kind of very easy to chuck on in the car. You know, there's nothing. It's not too taxing on the old brain. You know, so and let's face it, there's not too much taxing space left when you get to my age. So we need something nice and simple. But yeah, I like it. Really pleased I got back into these, or not back into them, got into them first time around, albeit 45 years too late. But hey, what's half a decade, half a century between friends?
Well, yeah, exactly, absolutely. Well, that's quite an interesting one because again, I've never actually listened to Styx, but I assume that it probably wouldn't be my cup of tea.
I would be very surprised. I think you would probably, I could probably pick out, you know, half a dozen songs, the more rocky ones, the ones that J.Y. Taylor tended to write. He was much more aggressive guitar player, and yeah, you could listen to a Styx number with James Young playing guitar, and you go, yeah, what a fantastic guitar player, because you're not stupid, and you can realise when somebody's really strangling a Gibson Les Paul, and that's good. That's always going to be a good thing. But overall, no, the package is not going to be for you. It's not going to be for you. Maybe when you get to my age, you might be, but I doubt it.
I'm in too deep now. I'm in too deep. It's gone too far.
Yeah, it's probably that particular swamp is going to be too difficult to climb out of. Right?
Oh yeah, it just gets deeper and deeper.
Ooh.
All right, we're talking about going deeper and deeper. So this one, this is actually really for the sort of the stuff that I tend to gravitate towards. You know, we're talking death metal, black metal, thrash metal, speed metal, things like that. You know, and this particular band is actually considered to be a heritage band. You know, alongside the mighty Venom, this is the other band that gets mentioned the most when you're talking about the big influence and the big sort of the instigator of what became black metal. And we are talking about a little known band called Bathory. Now, of course, I am being sarcastic there because Bathory is quite a well-renowned name I don't know if you remember that particular
I
name
do.
and that cover. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I always used to say Bathory, though. Am I wrong?
Well, I think that, to be honest, it's more sort of regional dialect in in various different accents. It's Bathory or Bathory or
Yeah. Where are they
whatever.
from? Sorry, George.
Sweden. So
Okay. Okay.
so Swedish band. Now this, I think they were founded in around 84. I think
Oh,
it was
yeah,
the
it's very
same
early.
year that this album came out. So if you think this is 1984, I think we'd only just had a year prior to that, we'd just had black metal,
Mm,
Venom.
mm, mm.
We'd also just had Kill 'Em All as well. Good
Mhm, mhm.
comparison in talking about very fast, very, very aggressive music. I picked up a copy of this album because I'd heard so many things, so many things that I'd read and interviews that I'd watched, bands saying and artists saying, the big influence on us was Venom, Bathory, and Sodom, or Creator or Destruction. These names that were really quite prominent in the as influences in what became black metal and thrash metal, things like that. But I picked up this copy, and it's quite hard to get hold of a copy of this first self-titled album in this country. So this is actually like a European import. I think it says "Made in Sweden" on the back. You should almost certainly not be able to see in this tiny red writing at the bottom there. But picked up this European import, and this must have been about a year ago, I think. Yeah, the tail end of last summer. I picked this up, bought a couple of other things, and it's a case of, well, you're paying a flat rate on postage, you may as well chuck another couple of
Mm.
euros in there and get something else. And I listened to it and I thought, this just basically sounds like a slightly lower budget black metal. I'm really not, or more like Welcome to Hell. It's earlier, more primitive, not nearly as good as black metal. I was really unconvinced. I was really unconvinced by it. I thought, I don't really see what all the fuss was about. However, I then gave it a bit of time and revisited it maybe 6 months ago. And at the same time, because I'd read more things subsequently, I think it was actually interviews with the mighty Fenres of Darkthrone, that there was so much praise being given for Bathory. So I then listened on Spotify to some of the later albums. It's the first one from 1984. Some of the albums from the late 80s into the 90s, and actually started to think I might have been wrong. So I'm prepared to admit maybe
That's
I
the
was
theme.
wrong, because this, although no, I'm not going to say this is as good as black metal or Welcome to Hell, because those, for me, I've been into Venom for a long time. I've got a lot more history with Venom, but
Aye.
easily this particular album is up there. And when you put the context into it, this predates the first Sodom and the first Creator album, predates the first Destruction album as well. So it's predating all the major influences, and actually then it starts to come into context. That actually, you can see the cause and effect. You've got this album and you've got Venom. You can see where everyone else is then coming from. So over the last sort of 6 months, I've been steadily gathering the catalogue of Bathory, but annoyingly, it's actually quite difficult to get hold of this stuff on CD. I think you can. There is a label that has brought out the stuff on CD again, but it tends to be quite expensive. I don't. I'm not really happy paying 13, 14 pounds for a CD. Not a reissue. I want a ton of extra stuff, multiple discs and what have you. But on cassette, now I know this won't be particularly easily be viewed, but on cassette,
Yeah.
I have now acquired the full catalogue of Bathory. This isn't the full catalogue of just Bathory, because there's a few sort of unimportant other tapes in here that black metal fans will just think is crap. I don't know, not important in the least. no one knows these bands. You know, just ignore these unimportant particular articles, morbid tales going across. But so we've got the entire catalogue here of the mighty Bathory on tape. And when you start to get into albums such as the second one, so this was but only a year later, I think this was 85, The Return.
Yeah, I remember that coming out as well. Yeah.
Absolutely glorious. This is first wave black metal in its absolute prime. This is so good. It's so firmly rooted in sort of I guess heavy metal, but also what the thrash scene was starting to emulate, with just being fast and aggressive. This is Under the Sign of the Black Mark, which I think is a fantastic title, absolutely brilliant title, and it just goes on. It just goes on. So I'm currently up to, oh no, a little bit further on. We've got Blood, Fire, Death with this great. Yeah, but this artwork is great because this is like proper mural style stuff. This is really, really good.
Yeah, I remember that coming out as well. Yeah, all these the covers are very memorable.
Yeah, they are absolutely memorable. And they not only defined Cawthon and black metal, not Bathory, not only defined black metal, but also what became Viking metal, which is an interesting subgenre. But that was indeed a subgenre that the mighty Enslaved fell very firmly into as well. So there's a bit of linkage here, but I mean, some of these albums are just great, actually. But interestingly, I listened to one of these albums, not this one, it's Twilight of the Gods, which is a personal favorite, because this is so epic. This is more rooted in traditional heavy metal, but it's just grand. There's doomy elements. If you like Candlemass and Maiden, there's bits that will tick your fancy there. But I listened to this album for the first time today. This is Hammerheart on tape, obviously. So I listened to this for the first time, and in fact, a little interesting story. I was listening to it and I thought, bloody hell, this sounds really slow. This sort of sounds like doomier than Candlemass. It sounds really sort of dark and just sounds a bit odd. And then I realised that my tape player is around here somewhere, was running out of battery. So it was slowing down. So it sounded massively drony and doomy, and the vocals all sounded really slow. Once I'd actually plugged it in and everything sort of ramped up a bit, realised it was just good old Bathory. And actually, they're freaking great. So I really do take it back on there. I dismissed it because I thought it's not as good. It's like Venom light, But no, not at all. Actually, it's really good stuff. Really influential.
Can I just say, first of all, that is a pretty impressive cassette collection there.
That is, isn't it?
That sight actually of those rows of tapes in a little box like that really takes me back, actually, because I obviously grew up in the era of tapes and vinyl.
Oh yeah,
so it's a nice thing to have, actually. And the other thing I'm going to say is the first one, the CD you've got there.
Yeah. Or that one.
No. Oh, is that the same one?
Same one, just different colour.
I think different colours. Yeah, the other ones. Yeah. I mean, but the CD is pretty good. What I quite like about that is that it leaves you in no doubt about what's going on here, because we've got the goat's head, and that's essential.
Yeah.
But Venom had kind of got there first, hadn't they? Really,
they had.
And I like the back of that as well. That's quite funny. It made me laugh because, again, just in case you didn't get it with the goat's head, put the pentagram on the back as well. So you're not going to get away with this, mate. We are definitely in this demonic kind of thing going on.
So, absolutely.
That's just sort of like belt and braces approach to whether or not you understand what's going on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I wouldn't have necessarily set out to get the catalogue in tape. It was just that Oh yeah, it's really cool because although we're talking about compilations, I've actually got all three parts of the, try and pronounce it properly, Jubileum Volume 3.
Right.
That's that particular article. All three parts have the same cover, which is slightly concerning. But that is a compilation series, which is sort of extra album tracks and different bits and pieces. And then we've got, because Cawthon, the sort of primary man of the band, the vocalist, did pretty much all the instrumentals after about 86 or maybe a little bit later. He actually died in the early 2000s.
Oh.
And there was a little series of tapes or albums released, compilations released in his honor, which is In Memory of Cawthon. We've got volume 1, 2, and 3 here. But I just happened to stumble upon a website, some sort of import site, that between the cost of about £6 and £8, you could get them on tape, new, sealed, 2022 reissues. I thought, well, I'll pay half the price of the CD and just get the whole lot on tape. Might as well. So I'm pleased that I did. But again, Bathory totally missed out on that one, because this is just good metal. Black metal.
One more very quick point on that as well, because you mentioned that, you know, in terms of the recording quality perhaps wasn't as at the level of maybe black metal or Welcome to Hell. But to be honest with you, that wasn't completely unbelievable production either, was it? Really? I mean, it was pretty basic stuff, actually, wasn't it?
But
really?
even compared to black metal, you know, this is raw, and right the way through. To be honest, I think Bathory, considering the influence and the impact that they've had on black metal and extreme metal just in general, and sort of thrash metal, Viking metal, whatever, their catalogue is by and large quite poorly produced. This is low budget, lo-fi, it's analog style. It's just,
but for some people that's the appeal. But for a lot of fans, that's the appeal.
Exactly, you know, that's the appeal. And,
like, we don't play this. We don't play this overproduction game.
But it works.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think I do think that that sometimes it's almost a bit of a badge of honor being badly produced.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly in this scene.
Yeah, I think so. I can understand that.
Absolutely. I
generally do love the artwork, and I certainly love the cassette collection. That really takes me back. My goodness.
Well, I've got, as you know, I've got about 3, you know, old.
I know you have, son. Don't worry. All right. Don't rub it in.
All of this stuff.
I've got about 3 cassettes, all of which you bought me. I'll tell you something. I've told you this before. I don't know how many years ago it was now. 20 years ago, I stood in front of a skip near our local tip, and I frisbeed boxes and boxes of cassettes in there.
A shame.
So well done, mate.
So there we have it. Bathory, a band that I sorely missed out on, but actually since getting into them, and it is a work in progress, because like I say, that there's elements of their catalogue that actually I haven't listened to at all, and some bits that, like Hammerheart, I only listened to for the very first time today. So that is a very new one. And I listened to it at slowed down speed, it's running out, and then listened to it at normal speed. I didn't even think about it, because it's this little particular device, you know, funny little thing. It's battery powered, but you can also plug it in. You can plug it in like a micro USB.
Yeah.
Didn't even think to try that. I thought, bloody hell, this sounds like a totally different band.
That was a common thing. That was a common thing back in the day when we had little cassette players and stuff like that, because they were only battery powered. So that and like the Walkman. I actually had a cassette Walkman years and years ago, and that was always the thing. You know, you bung it in, you get your new batteries in there, and also batteries were crap in those days. I mean, they were really bad. The last 5 minutes, you got your batteries in this way, and then all of a sudden, right. But obviously you would put up with it for a while. There's only so much of that you can take, isn't there? So,
well, yeah, because you're listening to something completely different.
Exactly.
You know, 1 minute you're listening to Metallica speed, next minute it's Black Sabbath speed. You know, it's just
exactly. Yeah.
Low right down. But Bathory, the mighty Bathory, a band I sorely missed out on. And then, of course, so pleased to have actually finally delved into the mighty Enslaved. Certainly with that album, Heimdall, just an absolutely brilliant. I would say they're progressive metal. I would also say that they were black metal, and I would say that they were Viking metal. They're just all across the board. You know, they've got a real mix, real variety. So certainly bands that I never bothered with, but now absolutely love.
There you go. And in this corner, King's X from Missouri in the USA, apparently. A band that I was aware of from the late 80s, but never bothered with. But now, equally, you know, I'm very glad that I have hit on this band. This, you know, again, as I said when I was talking about it, so many elements come into this. You know, it's sort of a bit of soul, bit of prog. There's all sorts of stuff going on here. Fantastic band. Really, really enjoying this. And then going back a decade or decade plus, real sort of stalwarts of the American arena stadium scene, Styx, band who I just couldn't listen to because of one very, very bad day at the studio that they had. But other than that, you know, really enjoy it. Really,
Good,
really. So
good commercially, no doubt it would have been
very,
good.
very good. Oh, international smash hit. It was #1 over here for 6 weeks.
That's terrible.
Time, you know, and that was, and of course, what you got to remember as well is that was in the days when the charts and chart shows, we had things like Top of the Pops. You won't remember all that, Top of the Pops, and then we had the pick of the pops, they used to call it, on the radio on a Sunday afternoon when the new charts came out. People would listen to them and watch them in their millions, and I mean in their millions, and it mattered. And all of a sudden, we got this at #1 for all that time. Oh my god! They might have done now, but but you know. Once I've got that out of my system now. 40 odd years later, I've got it out of my system now, and I've danced around it, and I'm happy with the rest of it.
It took a while, but
it took a while. It did take a while. Yeah,
I like it. Well, there you have it. That's another 4 bands that we never bothered with, but now we absolutely love. I'd be very interested to hear anyone else's kind of thoughts and opinions on these bands, and I wonder if it will come as a bit of a surprise to anyone. You know, the fact that you're a prog fan, quite a devoted prog fan, not listening to King's X. I'm sure that to a lot of people that is absolute treason or heresy.
I've no doubt it will be. I've no doubt it will be.
Or for myself, as a you know, a bit more on the extreme metal spectrum, not listening to Bathory or Enslaved for so long. You know, I'm sure that is absolutely sacrilegious, evil stuff. But hey, you know, I'm here now. Better late than never.
Better late than never. Very true.
But yes, we interested to hear any other thoughts and opinions. Feel free to share, of course. And do check back soon, because no doubt we'll be chatting about more things to do with, well, just good old-fashioned heavy music in a couple of weeks' time, no doubt. So thanks for watching. Check back soon. Take care. And as always, stay heavy.